In the middle of the Gavaldige Sugya of the Melacha of Bishuil, so we left off, still in the middle of the Hakdama of the introduction, trying to figure out what is Bishuil, what's not Bishuil, definition of Bishuil. If I remember correctly, I think it was Tuli. Tuli, I think you asked this kasha, right? What is considered to be Bishuil? What is considered to be something, when is it considered to be cooked? I think it was your kasha. I think it was. Was it? I think it was your kasha, right? Gavaldige kasha. So we're going to get to it today, and Reuven's got a Gavaldige kasha for us a bit later on, right? Okay, listen up. Like this, there are different forms of Bishuil. Okay, we're going to get to this a little bit later on, but just to give you a little bit of an introduction into that, would be there are different types of Bishuil. There's the actual Bishuil. Bishuil means cooking. Cooking generally means in liquid. Then there is another type, what we call cooking, but it's actually called baking or roasting. That means cooking something through heat, without liquid. Like taking a piece of meat and putting it into the oven without liquid. Okay, yes, we call it, did you cook the meat? But in halacha, that's not called Bishuil. That's called maybe tzli, or maybe afiyah, right? There's another one example of cooking. Did you cook the schnitzels? How do you cook schnitzel? You could deep fry schnitzels. You take oil, you bubble it up, whatever, and then you put the schnitzels immersed inside. Now again, we call that cooked, but it's not really in halacha called the definition of cooking. That's called tigun. Now why am I telling you this? Just to give you some vocabulary in the halacha dictionary of different types of Bishuil? No, because there's a major nafkamina, as we will see later on, between the different types of cooking, and sometimes when we switch them up. Right? It's going to be negayah to many, many things. It's going to be negayah to heating up food on Shabbos, for example, taking a kegel or schnitzel or something similar, putting on the hot plate. It's going to be negayah to filling up the children pot, for example, with water if it's drying out. All these sorts of shilas could be negayah over there. It's going to be negayah when you go to a place, you go to a simcha in Eretz Yisrael. One of the delights of going to a simcha in Eretz Yisrael is you get borekas with mushroom sauce. It's kavaldik. You can't be in Eretz Yisrael, not go to a simcha and get borekas with mushroom sauce. It's a chelik of being in Eretz Yisrael. Mom, it's kavaldik, right? Maskim Dani? Therefore, you have to know, is that mutter or is that asa? Are you allowed to pour the mushroom sauce on the boreka? Or another example, are you allowed to pour hot chocolate sauce on the chocolate cake? Right? Are you allowed? Zev, are you with me? Yeah? Forget about how... What? Exactly. Now, Rabbi said, let's move on. That is all definitions of Bishuil. Okay? Now what we have to discuss is what's called Bishuil. And this is Tuli's kasha. Tuli's wants to know like this. Tuli Friedman wants to know, Lemaisa, at what point is a piece of meat considered to be cooked? That's major nafkaminas. Huge nafkaminas we'll get to in a minute. But let's get to the definition. Levi Yitzchak, this is very important. This is mamish crunch time for anyone that has any shaykhs, which is every single person, to anything in the kitchen on Shabbos Kodesh, whether it's now and you're relying on the very choshev abachrim that help us out and do things for us on Shabbos. Okay? Just by the way, nobody knew this. I don't think anybody knew this. But yesterday, you guys ate chicken on the bone for supper. I don't know if you knew, but at 4 o'clock in the morning, somebody had to come to yeshiva, open up the freezer, take out the chicken to defrost it, so that someone at 6 in the morning could come and make sure that you guys have supper to eat in yeshiva. I'm just letting you know. Just so you should know. Anyway, where was I? So what's considered to be Bishuil? Okay, Rabbi Isai, let's move. And Melech, you with us? Get this clear. What is Bishuil? Okay? So there's going to be a major nafkamina. You listening with me? Clear. There's a major nafkamina if we're dealing with a solid or a liquid. Major nafkamina. Let's go one by one. We're talking now about a solid piece of food. It could be any food. As it's a solid, it's included in what we're saying right now. What is a solid, at what point do we say that a solid food is considered to be cooked? That is the shaila. So, we all know, there's a famous yesod, which I'm sure we all know, from the Gemara in Shabbos, Tav Chofam and Aleph, where the Gemara tells us about a Yid, Lav Dafka, but about a person called Michael Ben Jerusai, we call it Ben Jerusai. Ben Jerusai was a ganaf, and he used to go from place to place, and he wanted to dodge the authorities, and therefore he never wanted to spend too much time in one area. So he used to eat, but he used to cook the food just to the degree that it could be eaten when it was edible, and then he would move on, so that nobody would go along and catch him, and he wouldn't get caught by the authorities. Okay, that's what he did. So he named a food after him called Michael ben Drusai, which is, it's a machlokes rishonim, but the pashtus is it's a third cooked, which means it's just about edible. It's okay, you can eat it that way, but it's not the way that most people eat it. Now, came along many rishonim, and they say that if anything is a third cooked, if anything is a Michael ben Drusai cooked, which means it's edible, but not to the point that most people would eat it. So comes along the Ramban, comes along Rabbeinu Yonah, comes along the Rashba, the Rosh, and they say that's Bishuil. That means, Zev, if you take a piece of meat and it is cooked to a cooked of a third, that is considered to be Bishuil. Which would mean, by the way, that after that stage would not be an Issa D'Oraisa Bishuil anymore. It's going to be enough community to many things. Listen carefully. It's going to be enough community to many things. Again, Zev, according to many Rishonim, if something is cooked a third, it's considered to be cooked, which means getting it to that point is Bishuil. After that point is not Bishuil D'Oraisa. Mafkamina to many things. However, comes along the Rambam, and the Rambam says no. Nobody eats it that way. Because one guy ate it that way, that's considered to be Bishuil, the Gans Klal Yisrael. Can't be. Elamaizuk the Rambam, which pastures of the Shulchan Aruch's Psak and Simon Chesiv Dalet, and that if something is fully cooked, that's Bishuil. But until that stage, it's not fully cooked, which would mean, Lefi Shitas Rambam and Lefi the Shulchan Aruch pastures the Maran, that all the way until it's completely cooked, Bishuil. Once it's fully cooked, there's no more Bishuil anymore. Now, one second, before we take questions, I want to get this very clear. Why am I telling you that there's a machlokes rishonim? If anyway we generally paskin, like the Shulchan Aruch, the Maran, in Sif Daled, that says once it's fully cooked, it's cooked, but before that it's not. Why am I telling you there's a machlokes rishonim? What do you need to know this for? It's a lomda shashir that you have to know all the shitas? No. I'll tell you what I'm telling you this for. Levi Yitzchak, no. Okay, more than that, what's enough gemina? Like a korban, you're worried about to put in your korban pinkers to see how many chatzos you have to bring. Well, later on this afternoon, Beis Hashem, Mashiach is going to come, the Beis HaMikdash is going to come down, and we're going to have to bring a korbanos. Right, Shlomo? We're going to have to bring korbanos. You have to know what to do. Levi wants to know. Oh, but there's another reason. Nuchi, what are you telling me? What's the reason? Why am I telling you this? No? Hello? Anybody? Tully? Asha? Daniel? Ben? Hello? Why am I telling you about machlokes rishonim? So I'll tell you why. Very simple. That's also beautiful. You're right. 100% right. Kavaldik. We don't pass. Why am I telling you? I'll tell you why. Ben, you listening? Very important. Because if chas v'shalom, lo aleinu, lo shem yirachim, lo aleinu such a thing, if a person would do something that we're going to say, for example, he takes the children off Friday night because he wants to eat it. He opens up the lid and oy vay, it's mamish raw. When it's going very slowly, it's mamish raw. The beans are hard, the meat's not cooked, the potatoes are hard. It's mamish raw. Okay, so we'll eat it tomorrow. He puts it back in. Rachmana litzlan. He puts it back in. He's over on Bishuil. He's over on Bishuil because it's not fully cooked. Abba, we all know that the Pri Megadim, Paskins, which the Mishnah Berurah says in Simon Chesiv Aleph, very clearly that if something is subject to machlokes rishonim, if it was done b'di eved, Ma'aser Shabbos won't make the food asa, which means you're allowed to eat the cholent. That's what I'm telling you. Whenever you have a machlokes, true, we paskin like one of them. Oh, but b'di eved, if a person did it, he can eat the food. Now that's a big enough gemina, because often people come with shilas. I did this. What do I do now? Again, it wasn't allowed to be done, but b'di eved, if it was done, then the Ma'aser Shabbos will generally be mutar if it is a machlokes. I want to get this very clear. I want to get this very clear because I don't want to have anyone with any mistakes. A solid item. Machlokes rishonim. Some hold until Michael ben Drusai. That means after Michael ben Drusai, no problem. At least b'daraisa. Most, and this is how we paskin, holds until it's fully cooked. The rov, in other words, most people eat it that way. Then it's not considered to be cooked, right? But once it's fully cooked, it's okay. Okay, so just a couple of things. Number one, nafkamina to many different situations, which we're going to get to maybe tomorrow. Taking the lid off a cholent, for example, nosameya, if it's not fully cooked, there's nafkamina. People are going to ask me, you're going to put it back on. Are you allowed to put the lid back on? Are you allowed to open up an oven door? All these shilas are enough gemina whether or not the food is fully cooked or not fully cooked. If it's not fully cooked to the degree that most people eat it, then it's considered to be not cooked, and therefore any further cooking that's done through your action will be asa. Which would mean, theoretically, if you take the lid off the cholent, right, Ellie, and you want to put it back on, that will be asa if it's not fully cooked. Which is why you have to be careful about putting the lid back on the cholent, which we will discuss. We'll talk a lot about that, one by one. I want to get kaseda. So that's the din, okay? Ma'iro ben Drusai is one shita fully cooked and another shita. We'll talk all about that tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to talk about taking cholent out the pot, if you're allowed to do that on the fire, not on the fire, all sorts of shilas. No, lots of different things. Ovens, all sorts of things. Now, Rabbi say, let's move on. We've got a lot to do. That is the gabe foods. What happens to gabe liquids? Yosef, you with me? That's the gabe food. What's the gabe liquid? How does it work by liquid? So, Lemaisa, when it comes to a liquid is very different to a solid. The Gemara in Shabbos Daf Mem talks about liquid becoming cooked when it gets yad soledes boy. Which would mean, according to many Rishonim, that once a liquid reaches Yad Soledes Boy, or to make it Yad Soledes Boy, that's Bishul. The Bishul of a liquid is to heat up the liquid. Now we will talk about what's the din if liquid is already cooked. For example, you take chicken and you want to put it on the hot plate, but it's fully cooked. If there's liquid over there, am I allowed to do that? What if you take the lid off of the cholent pot and you serve yourself and you want to put the lid back on, but there's moisture in the lid? Are you allowed to put the lid back on? All of these shilas, you wash up a coffee cup and then you want to refill it with hot water. Are these going to be shilas of bishul or not bishul? But the general halacha is, and again, we've got a lot to do. If a liquid is cold and you heat it up, that's the bishul. What's bishul? What's the degree of bishul? Yad soledes boy, according to the Gemara, which Rashi says is the degree that you would recoil your hand if you get anywhere near it. You're like, oh, you're scared you're going to get burned. By the way, just to give you an example of Yad soledes boy, could you bring me a kashrus in the kitchen, please? It's a wonderful book. Thank you very much. So over here, there's a book here called Kashrus in the Kitchen. It's wonderful. So he writes over here. He brings various examples. I want to give you these examples. I think it's very negay for you to know. What is considered to be Yad Soledes Boy. So Yad Soledes Boy, according to Rav Moshe and other poskim, is 45 degrees. Right? Now, how hot? How do we measure 45 degrees? How are we meant to know if something is Yad Soledes Boy? What do we do? Celsius. Okay? So that's 113 Fahrenheit. 113 Fahrenheit, 45 Celsius. What to give me some examples. Reuven, are you with me? Let me give you some examples of Yad Soledes Boy. Okay, if you make a lukewarm bath for a young child, that bath will generally be somewhere between 99 and 100 Fahrenheit, 37.8 Celsius. The average bath, if you make yourself a bath, it will generally be 101. If you have a really hot bath, it's going to be between 104 and 105. A hot water tap in most homes, if you open up the hot water, you wait obviously a couple of minutes, whatever, coming out hot water, listen to this, is, seconds, whatever, depending on where you are, is between 120 and 125 Fahrenheit. That's well above Yad Soledes Boy. A hot cup of coffee, okay, with a little bit of sugar, a little bit of milk, is 125 Fahrenheit, which is 51.7 Celsius. A hot glass of tea, without milk, versteht sich, is 165 Fahrenheit, which is 73.9 Celsius. And a hot bowl of chicken soup could be 180 Fahrenheit, which is 82.2 Celsius, which means that many of the things that we're dealing with are all Yad Soledes Boy. Okay, Rabbi say. Many of the things, one second. Many of the things that we have are Yad Soledes Boy. So according to many, heating up a liquid to that degree is called bishul. Now there is the shita, which I'm sure many of you are asking why I haven't said it until now, is the Shvishas HaShabbos, and for example the Tilla David, that they want to time it's up until bubbling. If it was never bubbled, it was never cooked. Now this is a big nafkamin. I'll give you an example. Eli came to me once on Erev Shabbos, and he says to me that the hot water urn over here in Yeshiva was not full to the top, And there was a moedika pachad that there wouldn't be enough hot water for tomorrow morning's coffee. Now, the coffee before davening on the Shabbos it's a great zach and a Chasidus, it's a big zach. So he wanted to go along, it was right before Shabbos, and fill up the hot water urn with cold water, but obviously not press the boil button because there isn't enough time for it to boil and switch it off. And obviously, you know what happens when you press on and say, yeah, I'll remember to do it. It never happens. So he wants to leave it that way, and it's fine because it's going to get hot by tomorrow morning, but it never bubbled. So you'll tell me, big deal, it doesn't need to bubble. You're right, it doesn't need to bubble. But here's the problem, Lady Yitzchak. If the next morning on Shabbos morning, right, you get up before davening, you're checking the matzah, and obviously for the te'eles of the bochim, you're checking the heilige shulent, and you see that it's got no water left. And by the time, the olim eats and brings and kiddush and everything, it's going to be burnt. So you want to add water from the urn, which we'll get to how to do it and how not to do it, whatever, into there. But when you do that, it's going to bubble. Now hold on a minute, this water never bubbled before. It never bubbled before Shabbos. It will be also for you to take that boiling hot water on Shabbos, without getting into all the shadows of Chazor and how to do it, we'll talk about it, to that shulin, because that people don't know this, by the way. People do not know this. They think, it's hot, it's from the urn, it's okay, I can put it in the shulin, put it right in, no problem, the Zeya, Yodea, Simon Sari Pace, the Piskachuv over there. People are busy with all the other stuff. They don't chap this one. I'm telling you, most people do not chap this one. So that's the problem. If it never bubbled, so according to the Shvisha Shabbos and others, that Bishuil is only when it bubbled, this didn't bubble, according to many, it will be a problem. Now, again, there's a lot to discuss, a lot to get to, but just to finish off for today, so if I didn't get to Yad Soledis boy, I'm generally going to be okay. Let me ask the Olam Akasha. The baby is crying. I need to make a baby bottle. Now, to make a baby bottle, you take the milk and you put it, for example, near the hot plate in a place where it could get Yad Soledis boy. Now, I don't want to heat it up to get to Yad Soledis boy, because obviously I know that's going to be Asa. Am I allowed to heat up the baby bottle just so it gets a bit warm? It's freezing cold because it's cold milk from the fridge. I'm allowed to heat it up in a place where it could get Yad Soledis boy if I will not allow it to by taking it off earlier. Are you with me? So the halacha is, the Shulchan Aruch says in Seif Yud Dalet, in Shin Yud Ches, that it's a gzeira midrabanan that if a person puts liquid in a place where it could reach Yad Soledis boy, even though you're going to take it off before, if you leave it there, it's going to get cooked. It's going to get Yad Soledis boy. And if it's going to get Yad Soledis boy, that's Bishuil, according to most poskim. Which means, Zuk the Shulchan Aruch and Seif Yud Dalet, that if you want to take a baby bottle, or not even a baby bottle, let's say you want to take any liquid, let's say you want to serve a nice warm hot chocolate sauce. I don't want it to get hot, I'm okay with it getting warm, but I can't serve it cold. So I put it on top of something else. If I leave it there for 10 hours, it will get Yad Soledis boy. But I need it there for an hour. I just want to get a bit warm. The halacha is, that would be asa. Why? Because there's a gzeira that if you leave it there, it will turn into Yad Soledis boy, which will be Bishuil D'Oraisa, and therefore there's a gzeira d'Rabbanan that you can't put it on. Let me tell you, however, on Moedik Kula that I heard from Irish Yeshiva of Scheinberg Zatzal, where he says a Moedik Zach Betzim it's the Chai Odom Remez in the Shatzian, that he says like this: what if the baby is crying? Oh my God, you can also tell. What happens, for example, if the baby is crying? Now, there's no way you're going to leave the baby bottle there because the baby is crying, and therefore I need to give it to the baby ASAP. So I'm going to put it on just for the minimum amount that I need and whip it off and give it to the baby to stop the baby from crying. That would be mutter. What do you mean? You're not allowed? Yeah, but any time there's a situation that's clearly taking me away from leaving it there, I'm going to take it off. It's going to stop me from leaving it there. So if Scheinberg is mutter to put it on, because we're no longer smoking the but the alumtis that's going to get on fire, whatever. Moedik chiddush of Scheinberg. Al Kaponim, that's the chiddush when it comes to liquids. Now, what happens? One last thing: if the cholent is fully cooked, am I allowed to cause it to continue to cook to get a bissel besser? Are you allowed to make it better, to koch it up a bit? Is that mutter or not? Shimon, what are your taina? You take the cholent off with all the conditions that we're going to mention, Be'ez Hashem, and putting it back, and by putting it back, it's going to koch more. It's going to get better and better. So the answer is that's called mitztamik v'yofaloi. Mitztamik v'yofaloi is mutter. Once something is fully cooked, I'm allowed to allow it to get even better by being longer on the flame, longer in the crock pot, more in the oven, whatever it may be, and that would be okay. It's only when it's not fully cooked, allowing it to cook quicker, or whatever it may be, we'll discuss tomorrow, that's problematic. Rabbi say tomorrow, big sugya, taking what we've learned today and putting it into a very practical terms of ovens, crock pots, thermoses, and all these things. Join us tomorrow.